Welcome to the semifinals of the Magic Online Championship. I'm Ben Sek. I'm with Paul Rietzel. We're going to be watching a Jund mirror match. Steve Rubin, like Pro Tour champion Steve Rubin, versus Niklas Dahlquist. Now, let's have a look at the hands. What are we seeing in his hands, Paul?
Yeah, both players are pretty happy with their hands. I think both players have lands, they have spells, they have answers. Steve notably doesn't have a third land yet, so the first inflection point in this game is going to be whether Steve's able to find that third land to keep developing his game plan. It looks like Nicolas's hand actually matches up pretty nicely against what Steve's able to do. He's got 1-for-1 removal spells, he's got some repetitive advantage engines, and he's got enough lands to deploy all of his all the cards in hand. So we'll see how these early turns develop.
Yeah, the early hands really kind of determined by making sure you hit your land drops and making sure that you can stick a threat. So with a lot of removal on both sides, doesn't seem like a threat's going to remain on the battlefield for too long. But Steve really hoping that he hits at least his third land drop.
Right, and this kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, that plan A for Jund is to use one of the 1-mana sorcery discard spells, whether Inquisition of Kozilek or Thoughtseize, to clear the way for a 2-drop like Tarmogoyf to pressure their life total, or Dark Confidant to start gaining card advantage. In the Jund mirror, the decks are so loaded with removal spells that plan is usually pretty ineffective, and we're going to see the players probably trade off resources for a few turns, and then we'll settle into a middle game.
Steve drawing his Bloodstained Mind turn 3 right on time.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's breathing a sigh of relief there.
It's amazing. It's good, clean living here. He would have had to use one of his 1-for-1 removal spells to deal with the Dark Confidant. He'll be much happier to use Liliana's minus ability to not only deal with Dark Confidant, but provide a threat that Nicolas is then going to have to probably use his own resource on. So huge draw for Steve. Very important for him to find that third mana. And Nicolas, importantly, doesn't have his second black mana yet. So early advantage Steve Rubin.
Yeah, so do you think he's going to go play another Ooze and the removal spell, or do you think just Liliana?
Again, the standard play would be to put Liliana of the Veil in play and use the minus ability, because the worst case scenario, even if they had some sort of a haste creature, is you're getting a 1-for-1. And if they don't have some which of course he couldn't have a haste creature, and because deck lists are known at this point. Now he's dealt with the Dark Confidant, and he's produced another threat on the board at the same time. So Liliana is really serving multiple functions for him, and could take this game over.
Now Nicolas with a little bit of the color issue, as you said, not having the second black for either Liliana. He does have an answer for Steve's Liliana in the form of either Maelstrom Pulse or Abrupt Decay.
Yeah, and again, the issue for Nicolas is that would open him up to just a very early 2-for-1. He would love to be able to slam one of his own Lilianas here and just put Steve in basically the same bind that Nicolas is going to be in. As is, the Scavenging Ooze is an inviting target for Steve's removal, and the nightmare, of course, of being able to add a Bloodbraid Elf for the board, exists as well.
Okay, so Nicolas decides to go for a Scavenging Ooze and making it slightly bigger instead of going for a removal spell on the Liliana. Steve drawing another land right on time. I think he'd prefer if it came into play untapped so he could deploy that Bloodbraid Elf, but still, fourth land is a fourth land.
Yeah, Steve, very importantly, on turns 3 and 4, drawing his third and fourth land, is going to allow him to continue to press his advantage. So I think he just wants to sculpt this turn very carefully. He's certainly going to want to be using the plus ability of Liliana of the Veil, and he wants to consider the possibility that Nicolas plays a fourth land and a Bloodbraid Elf on his turn. Steve would like to make removing this Liliana of the Veil as painful for Nicolas as possible. He certainly doesn't want to just expose it to getting hit by a 3/2 haste. So we know that there's no possibility of Nicolas having a turn 4 Bloodbraid Elf, but Steve certainly is going to be cognizant of that possibility.
Okay, if that's the case, does he not discard, right now he has no way of actually killing that Bloodbraid Elf because he used the Lightning Bolt. Do you think you would have used the push so the Lightning Bolt was available for the Bloodbraid?
Well, what we might see him do here is discard Scavenging Ooze, play Raging Ravine, and say go. And then even if Nicolas is able to Bloodbraid Elf into a removal spell, it would turn on the Revolt of Fatal Push, and Steve would be able to keep his Liliana alive.
Makes a lot of sense. So I think both players deciding what to discard to that Liliana Veil.
And again, we're talking about hypotheticals here that can't exist. We're just working through, Steve's thought process. Certainly, Nicolas doesn't have a fourth land or a Bloodbraid Elf, so that's not the way the next turn's going to go. But I'm just trying to give you some insight into what Steve might be thinking about right now.
Right. One of the actual remarkable things about this event is for Nicolas is he's not a modern player at all. I mean, he basically started playing modern for this event himself. I believe he actually qualified via limited route. So really impressive event for him, going 5-3 against some of the toughest players in the world.
Absolutely, very impressive. Yeah, I think I read somewhere that he has fewer than 100 constructed matches lifetime on Magic Online. So super impressive. So we saw Steve opt to go with a slightly different route, valuing getting another threat on the board over leaving up Fatal Push. It's not going to work out for him here as Nicolas has a really high value Maelstrom Pulse.
Yeah, no, just really like walking into this Maelstrom Pulse here.
Hard to really criticize walking into a Maelstrom Pulse, which I believe is a one of in Nicolas's deck. So, Nicolas with a nice kind of haymaker to get himself right back into this game.
Yeah, isn't able to deploy another threat onto the table. And one of the advantages is now he gets to play a Treetop Village tapped, playing a Bloodbraid Elf out, and still using Liliana and actually not having to discard a card.
Yeah, just everything really coming up Steve Rubin in this situation. His draw was really missing lands, and on turns 3, 4, and 5, he drew his 3rd, 4th, and 5th land. Bloodbraid Elf cascading into Liliana, not the perfect thing. It does actually allow him to get another loyalty onto Liliana, and notably his hand is empty, so he's able to tick up Liliana and use it as a one-sided discard spell. And now he's kind of got the world here. He's got a threat in play. He has multiple creature lands on the battlefield. His mana is really well set up, and Nicolas still has to deal with the problem of it ticking up Liliana. So Steve in a great spot in the mid game here.
Yeah, Nicolas having the answer to Liliana in the form of Abrupt Decay still, so he probably has to keep that in his hand. May not actually keep his own Liliana. Yep, in fact, that's what he just chooses to discard, especially in the face of the Bloodbraid Elf and those creature lands.
Right, and so Steve is considering here whether he wants to get in for 3 damage or potentially consider chump blocking a threatening Raging Ravine on the next turn. Pretty tough decision. I think I'm inclined to want to get the damage in here. I think that if your opponent's next turn is land, attack my Liliana, Steve's next turn will be threatening another 7 damage to put Nicolas down to 6, and Steve's pretty happy with the way that develops. I'm sorry, 5 because of the Bloodstained Mire. So tough decision, but I'd slightly lean towards attacking.
Yeah, no, and it's not clear that Nicolas doesn't have a land in play. In fact, he hasn't actually missed a land drop, even though we know that he actually just ripped that land this turn. Though, if he puts the pressure on, he knows that he himself has 2 creature lands, so he's still going to be able to fight pretty well, and maybe he's willing to give up this Liliana.
Right. It's hard to sometimes separate your own instinct for what's the right play with what actually is the right play in retrospect. But I've just been constantly impressed by Steve's play throughout this entire tournament. Obviously, that aligns with the fact that he happened to agree with a lot of my predictions a lot. But obviously, I think that he's an excellent player and just I think he's just kind of orchestrated this game exactly as he wants.
Okay, a really good draw actually by Nicolas. Allowing him to double spell. He could have double spelled with the Ooze, but this actually might allow him to get back into the game card-wise in the form of Dark Confidant. Do you think he's going to play the Confidant or the Ooze?
I'm not sure if he has time for the Confidant, quite frankly, unless he's looking to trade it off for the Bloodbraid Elf. He has to Abrupt Decay Liliana this turn. There's no debate about that. The question is, which threat is he going to deploy? If he plays Dark Confidant, Steve is threatening 7 damage on his next turn unblocked. I don't think that Nicolas can afford to just play Dark Confidant and then have it not enter combat. So if he's playing Dark Confidant, it's probably with the intention of trading off of the Bloodbraid Elf. But notably, Nicolas has 4 green mana. There's plenty of food for Scavenging Ooze in the graveyard. There would be some temptation here to Abrupt Decay Liliana, play Scavenging Ooze, and then threaten a very large Scavenging Ooze next turn.
Okay. I think he's going to lead off with the Abrupt Decay because he's he has to play this card.
Yeah, there's this part of the turn is obligatory.
Okay, now let's see. Yep, decided to go with the second line. Steve drawing an Inquisition. Luckily, even though Nicolas has one card in his hand, it is eligible to be discarded.
It's a really tough decision for Steve. He's going to make it very quickly, but it's really tough here to determine whether you want to Inquisition or fire up the Raging Ravine to get that counter. And I think Steve has correctly deduced that the card in Nicolas's hand cannot be Bloodbraid Elf based on the way that this game is developed. And so it was very likely to be a card that was under forecasting cost and a non-land. So I think, again, another really sharp decision by Steve to fire off that Inquisition there.
Yeah, really, really good read. Okay, so fires up the Treetop. Like one less damage than the Ravine, but I think more importantly, not actually getting a counter to that Ravine. Okay, so Nicolas going down to 6, drawing a Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, and this ooze is going to be a problem for Steve. So this is when we see, we get into this part of the game with Jund decks. Steve has designed his deck to be able to beat things like a 5/5 Scavenging Ooze, right? We know he has access to 2 more copies of Fatal Push, 2 more copies of Liliana of the Veil. He's got plenty of answers to the Scavenging Ooze, but unanswered Scavenging Ooze can hold off all of Steve's possible attackers, and it's the life gain is going to put him out of range of Steve maybe going around it. So, for the time being, Nicolas has gotten himself right back into this game.
Would you hold back if you're Nicolas, or do you think you want to just clear away the Bloodbraid and start pressuring Steve here?
It's a good question. I might just attack. Yeah, I think that because of the fact that Steve has so many really, really strong draws in his deck, I think he's going to want to get this. Wow.
The perfect draw. Really, like, he may even want to try and induce the Lightning Bolt. Yep. So it's almost 100% that Nicolas decides to bolt here. Just the life totals being what they are. No?
It's just good, clean living for Steve Rubin. I mean, obviously we've seen him play really well through this entire tournament, as I mentioned, but man, when it's your weekend, sometimes it just feels like you just summon that Liliana of the Veil to the top of your library, and there it is.
Okay, it looks like Nicolas is tapping that red mana, so he's going to bolt the Bloodbraid, which is going to leave a very, very clean Liliana minus loyalty ability, getting rid of the 5/5 ooze.
And this is where, Nicolas wants to draw Bloodbraid Elf so badly right here. Bloodbraid Elf into some any other threat or creature is so powerful.
Oh, but no, just a land, and that might be kind of like lights out right now. I mean, I don't mean that it's like 100%, but it's, Steve's going to be able to attack again with the land, probably with the Ravine this time, I think.
Well, Nicolas, if he plays the Blood Crypt untapped and attacks with Raging Ravine, is threatening lethal next turn. So, Steve is going to have to consider the possibility that Nicolas just, attacks for 4 and then attacks for 5 with Raging Ravine. So Blood Crypt, not that bad of a draw, actually.
Do you think he maybe tries to clear the Liliana, or do you think that's not part of the equation?
I think the problem with attacking Liliana at this point is he puts himself on the back foot in that exact same situation. He's going to go to 7. Then Steve's Raging Ravine is going to be the one that's more likely to be lethal. So Nicolas just kind of has to move all in on the damage plan here and hope that Steve, bricks for a few turns.
Yep. Decides to play he attacks the face, bring him to 5.
Very far from a brick from Steve Rubin, short of maybe a Tarmogoyf, one of his better draws here, since this allows him to put a chump blocker in play for Raging Ravine, as well as attack with Treetop Village, and then threaten lethal with Steve's Raging Ravine the next turn. So, and Steve's under no threat of Nicolas being able to both activate Raging Ravine and play a removal spell. So, an excellent draw. Again, Steve kind of has taken the upper hand back, but a Bloodbraid Elf could change everything if Nicolas is able to draw it.
Okay, so attacking Nicolas down to 4, as you said before, threatening lethal with his own Ravine. Okay, drawing a Blooming Marsh. This land nowhere near as useful as the last one.
Right. And so now Nicolas is in a situation where he's going to need some help from Steve's Dark Confidant. He's going to have to say go with this Raging Ravine. Very likely, unless Steve draws something excellent, Steve's going to fire up his own Raging Ravine and attack with both of his creatures. The Ravines will trade off. Nicolas will go down to 2. And, he's going to be in a really tough spot facing both a Dark Confidant and a Treetop Village. So Nicolas is hoping for kind of a big number card here from this Dark Confidant.
There's the Thoughtseize, which is useful in that it's a blank and does damage.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but it's pretty close to ideal. It's a total blank, and it gets Steve down into the danger zone, gets him down to 4. So now Nicolas has a clean out of Dark Confidant hitting a Bloodbraid Elf next turn.
Okay, attacking Steve knows that he can actually... I wonder if he's going to attack with both creatures. Yes, because he knows Nicolas is forced to block Ravine and Ravine, and they'll trade.
Right. This is the play pattern we discussed last turn. Kind of an obligatory block here for Nicolas, and I think a good attack from Steve. He wants to get this game over with as well, and Nicolas, for maybe the 4th turn in a row, really would like to either draw a Bloodbraid Elf or see a Bloodbraid Elf on the top of Steve's library.
Okay, this is where it comes down to. This is a really important draw. So let's see. Nicolas draws Black Heathcliff, so he's not going to be able to win via his own card. So he's going to have to hope for Steve to really brick this draw. I mean, I think it's just Bloodbraid Elf, I believe, that will kill him.
I believe so. So yeah, 38-3 or about 13-1 here.
Yep, nothing. He draws a forest with the Dark Confidant, so he's safely going to win. Okay, Steve Rubin goes up 1 game in the first match of 3. So let's see how they sideboard here. We've talked about some of the sideboards. Let's see what their actual sideboarding is going to be.
Yeah, both players will have had a plan for this matchup, based on preparation and discussion with their team. So we see Steve, really just kind of tuning around the edges. Neither player really, going with the plan of removing all their discard spells right away. So interesting. Neither player likes Fulminator Mage.
Yeah, I mean, Fulminator Mage, doubles as a threat, as well as getting rid of some of the creature lands that are often dominate the board after the dust is settled.
Yeah, I should say my confidence level that Fulminator Mage is the right approach in the Jund Mirror is fairly low. So I'll defer to these players who have done so well in this event so far. But they value the discard spells earlier. Thoughtseize is a little bit better than it used to be because of the possibility of taking Bloodbraid Elf before it can get online.
One interesting thing is Maelstrom Pulse still remains in Steve's deck right now, but Nicolas has decided to remove it. I mean, is that just a difference in philosophy, or do you think that Nicolas just has better cards to bring in?
Yeah, I mean, again, I traditionally I'm the kind of person who likes to take Maelstrom Pulse out in the Jund Mirror. I like my cards to be as flexible in all situations as possible, and sometimes you draw a Maelstrom Pulse when you just have 2 Tarmogoyfs staring at each other or something like that, and it's a non-functional card. So it's not a card that I usually like, but it's not wrong to leave it in. It can certainly be exactly the right tool you need for the right moment.
Okay, let's get back to the match. Nicolas now on the play. He looks like he has pretty reasonable hands. Still no 1-mana discard spells, but he does have a turn 2 Dark Confidant and the mana to play it. On the other side, again, no 1-mana discard spells. We're really not seeing those early, and kind of a land-heavy hand for Steve.
Yeah, but these land-heavy hands are not bad in the Jund Mirror. As we saw in Game 1, the games tend to go fairly long. You wanted to be able to deploy all of your resources, and the ability to activate creature lands is highly relevant. So you would much rather be the land-heavy player than the land-light player, with the possible exception of you don't want to allow something like Dark Confidant or Liliana to get out of control.
So Steve leads with a Grim Lavamancer. A threat that's pretty easy to answer, but can provide some kind of long game as the graveyards get pretty full.
I think a super sharp play by Steve to play Grim Lavamancer on turn 1. There'd be a large temptation to play the Raging Ravine, but notably Steve doesn't have any other answers in his hand for a turn 2 Dark Confidant, so he's going to get the Grim Lavamancer out, and Nicolas is going to play right into it.
Yeah, so he actually gets to play one of the fetch lands. Very, very likely to use that Grim Lavamancer on the Dark Confidant. It's surprising. Is it surprising that he decided to, essentially run that Confidant into a Grim Lavamancer that more than likely will be able to kill it?
Surprising. I mean, understandable with 3 ways to return creatures from the graveyard to his hand, but importantly here, Nicolas has found the perfect card in his deck, a basic Swamp, which is going to allow him to deploy Liliana the Last Hope and tick it up to deal with Grim Lavamancer. So Nicolas with just the ideal turn 3 turn after a rough start getting his Dark Confidant hit by Grim Lavamancer. So Liliana the Last Hope here, a really strong threat. Whenever you can use a Planeswalker, increase its loyalty and kill a creature, that's a thrilling moment in Magic.
Okay. It looks like Nicolas is trying to figure out whether maybe he wants to use the Kolaghan's Command, but let's see what he decides. Both really good options. Oh, he decides to go Liliana the Veil. It just seems like an interesting choice, considering that the other Liliana can actually tick up, or the Kolaghan's Command can actually, he's got 2 of them, so it might be, worth it to diversify what he wants to do.
Right. So this is a play that would have made sense perhaps before the Planeswalker uniqueness rule had been changed. If Nicolas was afraid that his Liliana of the Veil would never be able to be deployed onto the battlefield, and he really wants to start using the plus ability with the ability to deploy both Lilianas at the same time. Not really a reason why you'd want to get that Liliana out and have to use the minus ability as opposed to the plus ability of the Liliana the Last Hope, which is a huge threat.
Yeah, no. I mean, Liliana the Veil, one of the good things is it's able to kill some of the bigger threats, whereas Liliana the Last Hope doesn't actually kill that many of the threats. Obviously kills Grim Lavamancer, gets the Dark Confidant, but not too many things else than that. Okay, Nicolas not having a 4th land, but did draw a Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, so, here his decision tree has changed quite a bit based on his play last turn. I wouldn't be surprised to see him just start getting a Kitchen Finks onto the board, but honestly, there's merit to all 4 plays that he has available to him. I think that he's going to want to think about what he discards with this Liliana of the Veil, because that's going to inform kind of the rest of the turn.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about getting the Liliana of the Veil onto play early is that you're going to have to tick it up if it survives. And, notably, Nicolas's hand is kind of stacked. He wants to keep all of these cards.
Yeah, and it's important to note that Nicolas, will have realized that Steve, for his turn, played a Shockland untapped and then said go. So he is very strongly representing the card Kolaghan's Command here. So Nicolas is going to want to make sure that he plays carefully around that.
Okay, it looks like he was going for Finks, because I saw there was 2 green in his mana pool, but he's thinking better of it. He's almost like the only card really that Steve could have is that Kolaghan's Command, like as a reason to play the Shockland. I mean, there's probably combinations of 2 cards that might make sense, but so I'm pretty sure he's representing that pretty hard, and Nicolas is aware of that.
Yeah, and Kolaghan's Command, kind of a really nice tool here. When you're on the draw and you're already up 1 resource, the way that Steve is, Kolaghan's Command is going to allow him to not only kill Liliana the Veil, but either continue to constrain Nicolas's hand size or bring back Grim Lavamancer. I'm interested to see, which of those options he chooses.
Yeah, so Liliana the Veil ticking up. Nicolas deciding to get rid of the Liliana the Last Hope and see just a land.
Well, certainly, if Liliana the Last Hope is not going to be used to tick up and kill a Grim Lavamancer, then Nicolas is definitely not going to find a better opportunity for it. So certainly understandable that he wants to get rid of. He must just not value that card quite a bit at all.
Okay, so Steve at the end step actually returning the Grim Lavamancer back to hand and using the 2 damage to redirect to the Liliana of the Veil.
Makes a lot of sense, right? So the reason why he returns that Grim Lavamancer is because he wants to be able to deploy Tarmogoyf and have some sort of sacrifice fodder in case Nicolas has another copy of Liliana of the Veil, which is a pretty likely card for Nicolas to have in his hand. So I think, again, that probably was Steve's plan going into the turn. His draw of Inquisition of Kozilek has allowed him to kind of pivot, and he's going to lead with that instead.
Yep, he's going to see 2 Kolaghan's Command and an Ooze. Do you think he goes for one of the commands just to cut down the card advantage, or?
Yeah, all 3 of these cards are pretty major problems in a Jund Mirror. I think the fact that Steve has access to Liliana of the Veil, Grim Lavamancer, and Lightning Bolt means that he would rather start fighting through these Kolaghan's commands, and he'll figure out another way to deal with Scavenging Ooze.
Okay. Plays a Tarmogoyf, which I believe is a 5/6.
Yeah, and again, Nicholas's turn here was probably something like, make you discard, return my Dark Confidant, but the draw step of Terminate has allowed him an even stronger turn of removing the biggest threat on the board and getting to chunk in for some damage.
Yeah, just a real clean answer to that Tarmogoyf that really was bigger than any of the answers that Nicolas had prior to that draw step. Okay, Steve drawing another land. I wouldn't call it flooding out yet, but it's getting close.
No, actually, it could actually end up being pretty good here. He has the play available of Lightning Bolting Kitchen Finks, playing Grim Lavamancer, and then putting Liliana into play and ticking it up. He knows that Nicholas's 2 cards in hand are exceptionally strong, so it wouldn't shock me to see him make that play at all.
Okay, Grim Lavamancer comes into play. Liliana likely to come into play now with that card.
Certainly, and both players I think have done a good job over the last turn sequence or turn and a half of putting together plans and then being able to adjust on the fly as the differing circumstances of the game have brought new information to them in terms of their own resources available and what their opponent is doing to counter it. So I like the way that both players have navigated the last few turns.
Okay. Now I wonder if Steve might even be thinking that he could minus the Lily and then kill the Finks completely. Or, as if he might think that it's an option.
It's possible. That would expose Liliana to dying to Kolaghan's commands. So it's definitely an option. Kolaghan's command can't kill both Grim Lavamancer and Liliana of the Veil. So again, it's something that Steve is certainly thinking about. But my temptation with these planeswalkers, especially when a lot of the ways to deal with them are damage based, is where I can profitably tick them up. I want to tick them up. So we'll see what Steve does. He has perfect information here, so he'll want to be very careful this turn.
Yeah. So that Lightning Bolt's one almost definitely getting cast this turn, because it combos well with one of the Liliana activations.
Well, if he chooses the Liliana minus, he actually probably will not cast the Lightning Bolt this turn, since he doesn't want Finks to be able to attack during Nicholas's turn. So that's why he wants to make sure that he decides he knows exactly what he wants to do with Liliana of the Veil prior to casting this bolt. It's possible. There's also a universe that exists where he just doesn't want to activate Liliana this turn. But I think that just the baseline, the floor play of being able to tick Liliana up to deal with one of the 2 very threatening cards in Nicholas's hand is too attractive to turn down.
Yeah, I think knowing that Nicolas's hand does have 2 cards that he eventually has to get rid of really makes that tempting. It might price in having to chump with the Grim Lavamancer. Oh no, trade if it's bolted.
Right, which is not such a bad thing. If wow.
Oh, he might actually go for the play you're not ticking up at all.
Yeah, this is a fascinating turn. Again, it's one of those plays where I don't have a very high confidence level in my initial instinct. I would still make the play that I said initially, but this is a really tough turn, and keep in mind the stakes here. That both players are going to want to be very, very careful. Steve is potentially a few turns away from turning the corner and being up 1 out of 3 matches in the semifinals with so much on the line.
Okay, he decides not to tick up, has the bolt open, basically protects the Liliana from the command, though it's going to be interesting to see, I guess, if the Sphinx attacks, Steve will bolt it, so to take it out of combat.
Yeah, Steve his thought process here is that he really values keeping Grim Lavamancer on the table, and he really wants to force Nicolas this turn to use Kolaghan's command to kill Grim Lavamancer. And so his thought is basically, okay, I'm going to use Bolt to kill Sphinx during the attack step, so I don't have to put my Lavamancer into combat. And this is going to really put the pressure on Nicolas. He won't be able to deploy Scavenging Ooze to the board. He's going to have to deploy Kolaghan's command, or Lavamancer is going to be able to start to rip his creature apart.
Yeah, so if Nicolas is thinking the next level, he knew that Steve had a really big decision last turn. So he's got to try to figure out exactly what is in his hand. And with only 1 black or red mana open, the 2 cards that really stand out are Lightning Bolt and Fatal Push. So both are live if the command gets cast first.
Yeah, it almost can't be Fatal Push, though, because if it was Fatal Push, why would you want to keep Liliana on 3 loyalty instead of 4 to keep a Fatal Push to target Scavenging Ooze? Doesn't make any sense. So, I think Nicolas will correctly identify that the card in Steve's hand has to be Lightning Bolt.
Okay. Nicolas attacks. Steve gets rid of at least 1 attack with the Sphinx. Comes back to persist. This game is played out very interestingly because in many ways I don't know which side of the board I'd rather be on.
Yeah, in general, in these Jund games, you want to be the person with repetitive advantage generators and more land. And Steve has both of those on the table right now. So I think I slightly prefer Steve's hand. Nicolas certainly has the right kinds of tools to get himself back into it. But the Liliana is likely to not only rip his hand apart, but continue to put Nicolas under tons of pressure. And yeah, he thought for a second there about playing Scavenging Ooze. That would have been a catastrophic play as Lavamancer would have been able to kill Sphinx and then Liliana the Scavenging Ooze. So has to play the Kolaghan's command this turn.
Kolaghan's command almost definitely doing 2 damage to the Grim Lavamancer, returning probably the Dark Confidant because Steve doesn't have any cards in hand or artifacts in play.
Yep, that's. I don't think there's even anything else he could consider doing. There's no artifacts. He certainly can't wait until Steve's draw step to use the Kolaghan's command. So,
yeah,
nice play.
Yep, definitely priced into doing all those things. Good draw by Steve here. Dark Confidant, able to clear out the Sphinx with the minus and start recovering some of the cards. Oh, Nicolas just keep on drawing the hits here. He draws a Lightning Bolt to deal with the Confidant. Should he choose to do that, he's likely to deploy his Dark Confidant, which is relatively safe right now because the Liliana is only at 1 loyalty.
Yeah, Lightning Bolt, just the perfect draw. Certainly what he would have tutored to the top of his deck if he could. And now the tables have turned here. Nicolas now with a slight advantage, but Steve with a lot of good draws, obviously.
Okay, draws another Confidant, which if he plays, and he may be priced into having to trade here because the Confidant's likely to attack the Liliana. No. Oh, well, Nicolas just really just setting up his deck perfectly. The Motor Shuffler's like well in his, in his favor right now. Getting a lightning bolt.
Yeah, it's obviously Nicolas's deck has been very kind to him. It's interesting how this game has developed since that kind of key turn for Steve. Obviously, things are not going the way that he would have hoped, but he's certainly not out of it. Remember, we're living in a Bloodbraid Elf world, so even in games in which you fall, seemingly, way far behind in the Jund mirrors, a Bloodbraid Elf into a powerful cascade can get you right back into it.
Okay, Dark Confidant off the top. Sorry, attacks the Liliana the Veil, cleaning that out, and then a news to follow up. Steve draws a Liliana the Veil, forcing him to just to sacrifice one of these creatures.
Yeah, so it's going to get the use here, but the Dark Confidant, when you're at 20 life, is just so incredibly powerful. So it's nice to get the use off the board. The use was certainly a problem, but with so many life to work with for Nicolas, just gonna be drawing 2 cards a turn until Steve finds an answer to the Bob. Oh man!
Oh wow, Hazoret, and only 1 card in hand after casting it. This is going to be so much pressure. It's likely the Dark Confidant onto the Liliana, the Hazoret onto Steve himself. Steve at 6, basically going to get lethal next turn, and concedes. So Nicolas evening it up at 1-1 in the first of 3 matches. So instead of just 1 match deciding the the semifinals, there's going to actually be best of 3 matches. So this is a really, really important one.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of Junding for sure. And I actually really like this, the best of 3 matches format. It removes a ton of the variance. Both players are going to have plenty of opportunities to play their game 1 configuration, to play their post-sideboard configuration, to adjust their sideboarding based upon what their opponents are doing to their deck, to be on the play and the draw. And so, a lot of the short-term variance that occurs in a normal 3-game match in Magic will be mitigated by this best of 3 matches format.
Lightning Bolt is in the sideboard for Steve, whereas Nicolas has boarded up to all of them. I wonder if just having cheap answers. I mean, he obviously has the Fatal Pushes as well, but those are overloaded. Like getting rid of all the 2-mana threats in Nicolas's deck.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that Lightning Bolt wants to come in.
Yeah, again, it's a philosophical approach to Jund that I'm unfamiliar with. When I expect to play Jund, I expect to want to be able to draw good answers to my opponent's cards, not rip them out of their hand. Steve values very high. Both players value very highly the ability to rip their hand apart before they can even deploy their threats.
Okay, so Nicolas with a very, very land-heavy hand, 5 land, an Inquisition, and a Bloodbraid. Steve, with 2 land, 5 threats, has a Thoughtseize into Dark Confidant play. So he basically, might right now at least has a Dark Confidant that cannot be answered on Nicolas's side.
Yeah, Steve's hand is perfect, and Nicolas's hand is I think quite good. He's got all the lands to deploy his cards, a turn 1 play. Potentially one of the best cards in Modern. His biggest issue is if Steve has the perfect draw of Thoughtseize into Dark Confidant, and Nicolas isn't able to find a removal spell or a discard spell in his top 2 cards. So, we'll see if Nicolas is able to find one of his many answers to Dark Confidant before it gets out of hand.
Okay, Thoughtseize taking the Inquisition. Nicolas drawing a Tarmogoyf, which will be good in the next turn, but there is a Fatal Push in Steve's hand to deal with it.
Yeah, and in a matchup of incremental advantages, Dark Confidant unanswered early can make these games into total non-games. So, Steve is just kind of considering which red fetch land he wants to go grab here with the Verdant Catacombs. Which red shock land, and he's just going to be sitting there behind his computer, crossing his fingers in his pajamas, hoping that Nicolas doesn't have a removal spell.
Playing in pajamas, it's something you're pretty used to, Paul.
Yeah, I'm well equipped to play in pajamas. Wow, interesting. So he chooses not to get red mana. With the 2 Dark Confidants, he very highly values his life total.
Okay. Draws another Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, this is Nicolas has got a problem here. He can deploy Tarmogoyf, but Steve has a Fatal Push in his hand. Now, if Nicolas is able to find a removal spell, Steve has a replacement Dark Confidant, and Confidant's going to start, pumping out cards for Steve. So Steve is exactly where he wants to be.
And draws a untapped mana, which is really, really useful here because it allows him to play another Confidant should he choose to do so. But he might actually decide to go for the Lavamancer. But I think in the face of the first Confidant not getting killed, Steve wants to get ahead on cards as much as he can.
Right. We saw him value his life total earlier on turn 2, kind of presaging that he would want to get a second Dark Confidant into play. He wants to bury Nicolas on cards before things like Bloodbraid Elf and Planeswalkers get online.
Nicolas Steve, go on.
Yeah, Steve really wants to find either Liliana of the Veil or Fatal Push in his top 3 cards.
Okay, gets the Fatal Push. 2 Fatal Pushes. And luckily, only taking 1 damage for each of those Fatal Pushes.
Yeah, it's just ideal situation for Steve. He gets to deal with the Tarmogoyf. The Dark Confidants can continue attack. He's under no life total pressure. He can deploy Grim Lavamancer to the board. He can add a creature land, and Nicolas is going to need a very, very strong cascade off of this Bloodbraid Elf, something like Liliana the Last Hope or Maelstrom Pulse to get himself back into this game.
Do you think it's possible that Steve plays the Bloodstained Mire so he can keep up a revolted Fatal Push so he doesn't get hit too hard with Bloodbraid?
It's possible.
Yep.
Yeah, he's going to do it. Wow.
He knows the Bloodbraid Elf is in his hand, so maybe prioritizing his life total again.
Yeah, it's a little surprising to me, and I think that because he played the Grim Lavamancer, he's going to have a much cleaner answer to the Bloodbraid Elf in his hand than he might have wanted to save Fatal Push for something like Scavenging Ooze or Tarmogoyf or something like that. But certainly understandable. The way he's played this game, he wants to win off of these Dark Confidants. 2 Dark Confidants being in play, the damage can really start to add up, so he does want to be careful to not go too low.
If he Bloodbraid's into Maelstrom Pulse, this is going to be huge. No, not quite that lucky. Gets a Liliana, which is very, very good here, but may not be enough.
Yeah. It's actually a little impotent here. Steve has the flexibility where with 2 Dark Confidants, he could sacrifice one of the Dark Confidants, which removes a major part of the dying to your own Bob threat. The Grim Lavamancer can be a sacrificial lamb. So Liliana, normally a really strong card, but here Nicolas really kind of needs to do better. It's not nothing. I mean, the Hazoret threatens some damage as well, and certainly is not an easy card for Steve to deal with. So Nicolas not out of it by any stretch. He needs to figure out basically which path am I more likely to win? Can I fight through these Dark Confidants by killing them, or am I more likely to win by using my opponent's Dark Confidants against him? In which case, Liliana may want to take up here to make it more likely that Hazoret is online next turn.
Let's see. He's not aware of Steve's hand, so oh no, but he does know about the second Fatal Push. So he's going to try and clear that out by forcing Steve to cast a Fatal Push.
Yeah, my temptation here would be to take the Liliana up. I think it's unlikely that fighting through Dark Confidant is a way that Nicolas is going to be able to win this game. He's just too far behind on resources. So I would want to try to cheese my opponent out with Hazoret and maybe some unlucky Dark Confidant flips. But the fact that Steve can use Grim Lavamancer to kill one of his own Dark Confidants in a pinch makes that plan fairly difficult as well. So no easy path to victory for Nicolas here.
Okay. Nicolas is considering both those lines. Okay, he actually decides to go for the chance of the Dark Confidants killing Steve before he can actually get Nicolas dead. Ooze two, but one of the problems with Ooze is that yes, you lose 2 life, but you gain that right back.
Yeah, that's a nightmarish situation for Nicolas Dahlquist, who's going to lose his Liliana of the Veil this turn, and Steve's going to be able to deploy a Scavenging Ooze, which is, threatens to gain back at least 3 life from the graveyard, and the window kind of closing on Nicolas here in this first of 3 matches.
Yeah, the Hazoret, while it's going to be hard to get rid of, I think Steve's going to have plenty of time to play around it.
Well, he's also got 4 Liliana of the Veil, and he's, going to be drawing 3 cards a turn for the foreseeable future. So, in theory, eventually he'll find some way to deal with it.
Okay, Scavenging Ooze deployed. Going straight for one of the creatures in Nicholas's graveyard.
Yeah, sharp play here to get Scavenging Ooze out of Colligan's command range.
Do you think it's worth to play one of the tapped creature lands, or maybe Verdant Catacombs to fetch a forest to actually move it out of bolt range too?
Well, the problem is that I would definitely prefer to play one of the creature lands. The Verdant Catacombs will break you even on life this particular turn, and it's actually going to thin your deck out, which is something that at this point I don't know if Steve even wants to thin his deck out. So you break even on life, you're slightly down on having your deck thinned, and you still have not deployed your creature land for use next turn. So I like his decision to deploy one of the creature lands.
Okay, Nicholas drawing a Blackcleave Cliffs, and so really only has the Hazoret to deploy. I wonder if he's going to attack here.
If he attacks, he does risk dying next turn, but I don't think that he has any choice but to attack.
And he agrees with you, enters the red zone. Any blocks here from Steve?
I expect him to block with Lavamancer, activate the Lavamancer, put him to 12, and then he's threatening 6, 8, 10, 12 with the Scavenging Ooze, the Treetop Village, and the 2 Dark Confidants.
Yep, a bolt off the top is going to be very, very good. If he takes it, nope.
There's no reason to take it. He has lethal and his opponent's tapped out. So there's just no. He's just doing the very carefully counting to make sure, okay, this Verdant Catacombs gets my 2nd green. That lets me grow my Scavenging Ooze to 5 power. 5 plus 3 from the Treetop Village is 8, plus the 4 from the Confidants is 12, plus the 2 from the Lavamancer, and he has it.
Okay.
He could take it. It'd be very exciting to give Nicolas a couple sweats at the top of his library, but no reason to do that.
Okay. Ljubljana and Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt definitely helping the math in Steve Rubin's favor, should he choose to go that route.
Again, he's just being very careful to count up all the numbers here. He doesn't want to mistap his mana or something of that nature. But
so 3 and 3, yep, and that's right. Steve gets that game. And the first match, Steve Rubin moving ahead in this first match of Jund versus Jund. On the other side of the bracket, that's going to happen actually after this match. We're actually not running the matches concurrently. We're actually going to do them sequentially. But let's just have a quick talk about that match coming up. It's Boggles versus Grixis. We won't look at the deck list right now, but like, what do you think you want to be in?
Boggles traditionally is a nightmare for decks that allow a few threats to seep onto the battlefield and then try to pick them off with 1-for-1 removal spells. So a huge swath of Lars's deck in game 1 is going to end up being pretty useless against what Dimitri is doing. I don't know exactly what sideboard tools Lars has to deploy against Boggles, but I certainly favor Boggles overall in the matchup. That being said, Boggles is one of those modern decks that is most capable of self-destructing, but by not drawing, the eponymous creature. So, we'll see what happens, but the way Dimitri has been playing and operating his deck, and the confidence with which he's been manipulating those little boggles, I certainly like his side.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll be right back after these messages.
Hey everybody, it's Matt Tabak from Wizards R&D, back with some more Magic Online Championship trivia. I've got a little gatherer question for you here, or maybe you just know the answer. That'd be super impressive. How many creatures in Magic have a printed mana cost of 0? Are there 3 of them, 5, 7, or 9? That's creature cards with a printed mana cost of 0. If you think you know the correct answer, hit us up in chat or tweet using the hashtag MTGOChamp, and I'll be back in just a few moments with the correct answer.
My favorite card is Man of War for multiple reasons. I like Jellyfish, and also Man of War, the way its actual rules text is what I love about Magic. I love tempoing people out. I love stranding cards in their hand and beating them while they're still staring down at 5 cards. And Man of War lets me do that.
It's really hard to answer what's my favorite card, but I collect the camel card from Arabian Nights. So that has to be my favorite card.
My favorite card is Huntmaster of the Fells. I even got to play with it this weekend in the Magic Online Championships. I just think it's a great intersection of being a fun card, but not too overpowering that your opponent feels like they got cheated when you cast it, but it's just really solid, does a lot of different things at once, and it's fun to play with in a long game.
My favorite card is Winter Orb, because it's really fun to try and break the symmetry effect from it.
My favorite card is a question I get a lot, but I'm not sure. I like Argothian Enchantress a lot. I used to build a lot of Enchantress decks. I made top 8 of my first Nationals was Enchantress deck. I made a run in the Masters. I won the Grinder and made it all the way to the finals in the Masters, so that was pretty sick. So probably Argothian Enchantress. Other candidates are like Crystalline Sliver, Mox Diamond, Disrupt, Force Spike.
My favorite Magic card is Spire Barrage. When I was drafting at Carnegie Mellon University and started to kind of come up as a Magic player and learn the ropes, it was one of my favorite archetypes in Triple Zendikar draft was Mono Red. And I love drafting it, so I love having 10 mountains in play and just 10ing my opponent. It's awesome.
My favorite card right now is Gifts Ungiven, because it really rewards good plays and punishes bad ones, including you and your opponent, because each of you have to think about how to resolve it, and each of you gains advantage or disadvantage according to that. But previously it was Fire of Yevimaya, because it was fast and dump, just like this.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Before the break, I asked you how many creatures in Magic have been printed with a mana cost of 0, and the correct answer to that is 7. In fact, we got some tournament all-stars over the years, including Ornithopter and Memnite. We've got a trio of kobolds, Crimson, Crookshank, and Of Care Keep. And who could forget Phyrexian Walker, and my personal least favorite, Shield Sphere. We'll have more Magic Online action in just a few moments. How about now? We'll do that right now.
Welcome back to the top 4 of the Magic Online Championship. I'm Ben Sick. I'm with Paul Rietzel. we've just seen the first of best of 3 matches between Nicolas Dahlquist and Steve Rubin. Jund versus Jund. I mean, it really played out exactly how we kind of talked about before. Really grindy matchup, a lot of top decks, a lot of kind of card advantage.
Yeah, and what I like about the games we've seen so far is that they really haven't been decided by either player suffering from mana issues or just completely getting obliterated. There have been a lot of intricate difficult decisions throughout the course of these games. And, there are many different paths that Jund mirrors can go down. And that's why I think a lot of people like Jund as both a deck to play and are okay with it being one of the decks that's stronger in a format. It's not some overpowered broken deck, and it leads to a lot of intricate and interesting games of Magic.
Okay, the second match is ready to go, so let's head down. Hi, welcome back. This is the top 4. This is the second match of a best of 3 matches in our top 4. Nicolas Dahlquist versus Steve Rubin, both on Jund. Let's have a look at these hands here. Who do you like?
Both players have excellent hands. This is one of those games where, despite Nicolas having the turn 1 Thoughtseize if he so wants and multiple different threats, none of them are the kind of threats that really get out of control. They're just really damage-based threats. Steve, we see with access to Thoughtseize, with access to Fatal Push, and of course, more land than Nicolas, has his hand sculpted pretty well to deal with Nicolas's threats on the draw. So Nicolas is in a situation where he both needs to find additional lands and some sort of a repetitive advantage generator.
I think even though that Steve, I'm trying to figure out if Steve actually gets to play this round, because I wonder if the play actually gets reset every match. I'm not positive actually with it, because Steve was higher in the standings, so he actually gets to choose to play a draw, but I'm not sure if that carries over match to match.
Yeah, and we see Nicolas take an extremely aggressive mulligan where he had 2 lands, a Thoughtseize, and multiple 2-drops. He wanted to do better than that. He thought he needed a better hand to beat Steve Rubin, and unfortunately was punished with a 6-card no-land hand, and now is down to virtually no resources.
Yeah, so it starts off with the Inquisition.
As far as 5-card hands go, though, pretty good. I mean, he's going to be able to take. Okay, interesting. So he takes Fatal Push over Thoughtseize, and so Thoughtseize is going to be able to remove Nicolas's last remaining card. This indicates to me that he must have scryed a Dark Confidant to the top of his library.
Makes sense. And as you predicted, Dark Confidant off the top of the deck.
Wow. Good clean living for Steve Rubin. I mean, when you are just running good, you're running good, and he is certainly running good in this tournament. Playing well, but boy, has the cards been there when he needs them.
Okay. Nicolas drawing a Tarmogoyf, but can't cast it right now because his land came into play tapped. Steve drawing a Verdant Catacombs. Only threat he can play is a Scavenging Ooze, but it's going to actually get out of hand pretty quickly.
This is a phenomenal game for Scavenging Ooze when Nicolas's really only remaining threat is Tarmogoyf. Scavenging Ooze can just, it's a trump card for Tarmogoyf. And now we're going to see Steve start to be able to spin the wheel with Bloodbraid Elf and all coming up Steve Rubin.
Okay. So
Nicolas is not dead yet, right? So Nicolas really needs these Bloodbraid Elves to cascade into Inquisition of Kozilek or Thoughtseize. Those are the cards that Nicolas can really beat right now. Or something like Lightning Bolt.
Yep. That land made the Tarmogoyf a 4/5.
Oh. When you're running like Steve Rubin, it just does not hit Thoughtseize, ladies and gentlemen.
So Steve gets a Dark Confidant. Doesn't have a clean attack because this Tarmogoyf is 4/5. Okay, well, he's drawing a Liliana the Veil that will be able to get rid of one of these threats, most likely the Bloodbraid Elf.
Yeah.
I don't think he has the time to tick up, but maybe.
Yeah, Nicholas mulliganing to 5 there. His path to victory was that Steve was going to have to be on the absolute underside of Bloodbraid Elf variants and really just cascade into multiple bricks, while Nicholas drew really well. Steve cascaded into anything but a brick in Dark Confidant, and Nicholas is really in a world of hurt here. He's going to need to find kind of running Bloodbraid Elves of his own that cascade into virtually perfect removal spells.
Okay. I think it's just Nicolas considering his options, whether he wants to plus or minus Liliana.
There's no good plan here. If he pluses it, it's just, Steve gets to keep his entire board on the table. It's going to probably provide more food for the scavenging ooze. If he minuses it, then he's going to probably lose his Liliana the next turn. Again, more food for scavenging ooze. Steve with 2 cards in his hand, mana to cast any card in his deck. It's just a really tough spot for Nicholas early on in this game.
Also, he can't rely on that Tarmogoyf being 4/5 for the entire next turn because of the Scavenging Ooze. Scavenging Ooze can actually remove any card, even though it only gets +1/+1 counters for creatures. So it actually can strategically pick off like that Planeswalker in the graveyard, that land in the graveyard. Those are like one-offs there.
Yep, and importantly, one of each, and Steve with 2 green mana, so the ability to shrink Tarmogoyf to a 2/3, and
this can't really fail. Really,
sometimes it's your day. Sometimes it's your day. So Steve in a spot where he's going to be able to clear Nicholas's entire board, gain some life, attack for a bunch of damage.
Yeah, it might even have the almost flawless victory where Nicholas only has lands in play, no other permanents, and
Steve
no
has
other cards in it.
Steve has a backup card that was banned a week ago, so yeah, in reserves. I think that Nicholas, with the really aggressive mulligan decision this game that didn't work out, I tend to be someone who, in these sorts of really grindy matchups where everyone has discard spells and removal and it's just throwing haymakers, I tend to be less aggressive in mulliganing, since it's just such an attrition war of resources. And we saw here that Steve was able to just kind of, notch Nicholas and the resource department very early on, and then ride that to an overwhelming victory.
Okay, Liliana hitting the bin. Now Nicholas just playing off the top. Nowhere near as good a set of draws as Steve has had in the last couple turns. Twilight Mire into his hand. Plays that Mire. Steve's very, very likely to play this Bloodbraid the next turn.
Yeah, so Nicholas is just considering whether he wants to attack here. I think he probably... I assume you probably want to attack with Raging Ravine. There's no way that blocking is going to do anything. So maybe you sneak in 4, get him down to 11. He Dark Confidants, hits himself for another 4 down to 7. You draw a bolt down to 4, and he hits himself for another 4. That's kind of your path to victory. It's thin, but it's there. I mean, it's 12 moves away, but it's possible. There's no other. I mean, blocking with Raging Ravine is certainly not a winning play. So that's kind of his path. Steve would need to hit the remaining 2 Bloodbraid Elves, cascade into something that doesn't end up killing Nicholas again, and then Nicholas also draws a lightning bolt on his next turn.
And even then, actually, he can't lightning bolt and attack with his Ravine. Right?
Well, but the Ravine here hits him down to 11, right? And then Steve
got it.
Confidants down to 7, then 4 from the bolt, and then...
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
But he has to do that without... I mean, Steve has to...
Oh, he decided to leave the Ravine on blocking duty, which probably keeps the Confidant back unless something else happens.
And I think that puts Nicholas from 0.1% to 0.0% to win this game. It's not like he had much equity to start with. Yeah, he wouldn't have even hit the Bloodbraid Elf to start.
Yep. So Steve drawing a Forest and an Inquisition. Now going to play his Bloodbraid Elf just to really put the final nail in the coffin here.
Absolutely. Bloodbraid Elf, not traditionally something that you want to play into an empty board. You'd love for your removal spells to be live, but when it's a creature that can profitably attack and you're way ahead anyway, why not?
The free 3 damage. This Full Truck Berserker is slightly better than the normal one.
Yeah, we might see Dark Confidant attack here too, just because. No, he's going to be cautious.
Okay, the Rubin gets fired up here. Almost definitely going to try and trade with the Bloodbraid Elf. There's no creatures in the graveyard, so there's no way for that ooze to get bigger quite yet.
Yeah, but again, there's no path that this could possibly lead you down that leads to a victory. Even if he were to draw a Bloodbraid Elf, Bloodbraid into removal for Scavenging Ooze, he's still dead on board.
And there's no Bloodbraid Elf even to test that theory. Bloodstained Mire, drawn by Niklas, and he goes down 1 game in the second match. Best of 3 matches. Steve Rubin up 1 match. So we're going to see if Steve is able to put it away in this next game, or if Nicolas might be able to claw back in.
We see kind of roughly the same sideboard plans being deployed by the players. Nicolas doesn't value the Maelstrom Pulse. Steve does. It's a medium value card in the matchup, so hard to fault either player there.
Steve decided to actually bring that 3rd Lightning Bolt back into his deck. I think at the exchange of maybe an Inquisition. I'm not positive there.
Yeah, he also goes down to 4 Dark Confidants, which is interesting. So on the draw, Dark Confidant clearly gets a little bit worse since your opponents, all of their 3-drops interact favorably with Dark Confidant. Liliana of the Veil, Liliana of the Last Hope, and Kolaghan's Command all kill Dark Confidant while gaining you card advantage or leaving a residual threat on the board. So Steve's going to shave because he doesn't want to draw too many Dark Confidants on the draw.
Okay, Steve, having a little bit of mana problems. He only has 1 land. He is on the draw, so he could, feasibly maybe try. No, he decides not to. He decides to put it into and draw 6. And he's rewarded with 2 Confidants, an Ooze, a Tarmogoyf, and 2 land. Really good mulligan hand. Maybe prefer one of those creatures to be a removal spell, but still, good way of clawing back that card disadvantage.
Yeah, but notably, no way for Steve to interact with either of the Dark Confidants that are in Nicolas's hand. So we might see kind of a mirror image of some of the games we've seen previously. It's one thing that's been surprising about this particular match is how strong Dark Confidant has been. So frequently, when I played Jund historically, or I've watched other people play Jund, especially Jund mirrors. Dark Confidant stays out for exactly 1 turn before dying, but so frequently in this matchup, it's been able to stay out for a few turns and provide a definitive advantage.
Okay, so Nicolas puts his first of his 2 Confidants into play. Steve's responds with his own here. Nicolas does have a clean answer, and if he gets a land, he actually has a continuing answer, but he actually gets the land, comes to play tapped, so he's not able to actually play that Liliana of the Veil. Do you think he should be playing the 2nd Confidant or attacking with it?
No, I'm just blowing this Confidant out of the sky. We know that Steve has no answer to the first Confidant, or he would have used it already. So I want to make him find multiple answers to all of my Confidants over the course of this game. And Steve is just falling way far behind here. Yep.
So Confidant drawing another 2 land, really putting him further ahead. Likely that we see Nicolas play a Liliana and get rid of that other Confidant.
Yeah, no question about it. Nicolas a little bit lucky here. He didn't draw an untapped land. Untapped land would tempt even the most disciplined of us to probably play Bloodbraid Elf and spin the wheels, and it's just so much fun. But here, obviously, there's he has no decision points, so he's just going to be deploying Liliana and minusing it. The only thing that he might be thinking about here in the situation is that, Steve obviously had no discard spells, no removal. So Bloodbraid Elf is something that could very easily be in Steve's hand. So he's thinking, maybe I want to offer a trade with these Confidants or just play Kitchen Finks and say go. But ultimately he looks like he's settling on the sort of the standard line of Lily.
Yep. He also has 2 lilies in hand, so he may not worry about protecting this last one. Nicolas, go on.
And while Steve doesn't have Bloodbraid Elf, he certainly would love to draw one. As again, he's way behind in this game on resources and tempo and land. But if he's able to Bloodbraid Elf into a removal spell, it deals cleanly with Nicolas's entire board, and he's right back in it.
Okay. Steve draws Lavamancer to go with 2 Tarmogoyfs, a Scavenging Ooze, and a Wooded Foothills.
Yeah, this was a critical turn for Steve. He's going to be able to deploy a few threats to the board, but Nicolas is, again, going to draw 2 cards on his turn with the Dark Confidant ability. He's going to be able to tick Liliana up to rip apart the remainder of Steve's hand, and then he'll be able to choose whether he wants to use, Bloodbraid Elf's Cascade, perhaps deploy another Liliana and use the minus, or use one of his freshly drawn cards to deal with the Tarmogoyf threats. So, Steve can do things, but Nicolas has kind of all of the tricks in his bag right now.
Okay. What do you think Steve should consider here?
So my temptation would be to try to get the Grim Lavamancer online somehow. Hope that your opponent doesn't have any targeted removal, and then use Grim Lavamancer to kill Dark Confidant. So I'd put the Lavamancer out. I would probably protect it with one of these Tarmogoyfs, and then just hope that my opponent's hand is just all creatures.
Tarmogoyf is currently 3/4. So creature, land, instant. Hazoret off the top. So actually Nicolas took a little bit of a hit with that one. Going down to 12. Maybe it's Steve's turn to hope for some unlucky flips on Nicolas's side.
Yeah, Nicolas's life total is still plenty healthy here, and I think that this is a turn we're probably going to want to play Bloodbraid Elf, since this is a time where there is no bad hit off of Bloodbraid Elf. I mean, maybe another Dark Confidant, but if he hits removal, he's happy with that. If he hits a discard spell, he's happy with that. Little surprised to see him tick up Liliana first. I guess it indicates that he's probably just going to play the second Liliana here.
Or it's possible that he's, protecting against the Liliana flip if he goes with the elf.
I see. Yeah, that could be. Yeah. The counterpoint, I guess, is that if Bloodbraid Elf were to hit Inquisition of Kozilek, you'd want to cast Inquisition of Kozilek before ticking up Liliana to make sure that you got both the cards in Steve's hand. But there's good arguments on both sequences of plays.
Looks like
another counter argument is that the way that Nicolas has done it has given Steve less information about the rest of Nicolas's turn, which is going to make Steve have to make a less informed discard decision with Liliana. So certainly a defensible way to sequence the turn.
Okay. Looks like a Bloodbraid Elf is coming off the top. Let's see how lucky Nicolas is here. Tarmogoyf, very solid flip.
Yep. I'm a little surprised that we saw Nicolas discard a land instead of Dark Confidant to his own Liliana, as getting to 6 mana next turn to be able to deploy both Liliana and Kitchen Finks and just start to empty that hand for Hazoret is very valuable. But I guess he figures between Dark Confidant and his draw step, he'll be able to find another land.
Okay, Steve getting a land as his draw step, really only having the Ooze as the final threat in his hand.
Yeah, Ooze is very strong. Grim Lavamancer is going to be able to take out the Dark Confidant here. Again, Steve is kind of doing things. He's in contention, but we see all the tools that Nicolas has in his hand.
Yeah, I think
this Grim Lavamancer has two very attractive targets.
do you think he goes for the Lily, or do you think he goes for the Dark Confidant?
Well, I think he has to take out the Dark Confidant. If he takes out the Liliana, Dark Confidant's just going to keep, kind of running away with the game. But taking out the Dark Confidant, any removal spell from Nicolas, and he's going to be able to combine it with Liliana to take out 2/3 of Steve's board. So it's, again, tough spot either way. There could be some hope from if you're in Steve's shoes that we saw Nicolas discard Black Cleave Cliffs to the Liliana Plus ability. You could have some hope that your opponent has a bunch of lands in their hand, right? That's maybe one of the ways you're thinking about potentially winning this game. So you probably want to base your play based on that.
Okay, so Steve looks like he's passing, which kind of makes me think that maybe he's thinking about trying to burn Nicolas out.
Yeah, no question that's the only reason why you would want to make a play of this nature. And
wow, so actually Bloodbraid Elf gets flipped by Dark Confidant here, so bringing Nicolas down to 7, and now getting kind of dangerous. I mean, he does have a Finks in hand, so he's kind of protected a little bit. He does have a way of killing his own Confidant, but now 7 it's kind of low. It's not like too low when you consider the Finks in his hand.
Yeah, so we still haven't seen his draw step for the turn either, right? So yeah.
I think Nicolas might be ruining the fact that he got rid of his land here.
Right, he's Dark Confidant flooded now.
Yeah. Yeah, would definitely be able to play two threats next turn, like a Finks and another Lily or something like that.
Yeah, and now that there's the door's a little ajar for Steve here, right? 7 life. The Grim Lavamancer is threatening 4. Dark Confidant can certainly hit you for 3. So there's a temptation for Nicolas to just play Kitchen Finks here to guarantee that he doesn't die on his next upkeep.
But if he plays Finks, he can't really play anything else unless he chooses to play another Confidant, which means that it's a pretty anemic turn, all told. I mean, considering the power in his hand.
Yeah, totally. I think that if I'm Nicolas, I'm just going to be deploying this Bloodbraid Elf to the board, but we'll see what he ends up doing.
I mean, with the virtual 4 damage from the Grim Lavamancer, he's on 3, so he either has to maybe choose to sacrifice his Lily to kill the Bob, which it's pretty aggressive.
Yeah, I don't think he can do that. I mean, then he actually is just going to fall behind on board. He needs to use. See, this is why he would love to have a 6th mana here, because then he could use a Liliana, force Steve to kill a creature, use another Liliana to kill a creature, and deploy the Finks to the board. Having a 6th mana would be so valuable right now.
Okay, so he just chooses to play the Lily, targeting Steve, which makes a lot of sense. Gets rid of that Tarmogoyf from play. Now, options could be that he's going to play another Lily, really making Steve choose between the Grim Lavamancer and the Ooze. And if he keeps the Lavamancer, he now gets to make some pretty aggressive attacks.
Yeah, so what's important to note is that Grim Lavamancer currently has the ability to shrink Nicolas's Tarmogoyf small enough that Scavenging Ooze can just eat it. So that's an argument in favor of Nicolas playing another Liliana and using Liliana's minus ability targeting Steve, where he'll be forced to the difficult decision of removing his creature that can burn Nicolas out or his blocker. So Liliana minus is the play that gives Nicolas the best chance of threatening lethal damage on his next turn. but I think that he can still win a long game here. I think, Bloodbraid Elf cascading into anything reasonable, and then next turn, very likely to be able to deploy Finks to the board is a way to win the game also. But there's certainly merits to both plays.
I really like actually how Steve has navigated this, because he was so far behind in this game. He found a line that really put Nicolas in a squeeze here. Now, Nicolas had to draw a little bit, poorly and possibly make a couple missteps, but Steve's very, very much in this.
Yeah, no question. This is in some ways a flip side of the game we saw before. At some point, Steve realized he couldn't win a Magic game, right? He's not going to win by just playing creatures and fighting you on the resource and creature access. He's winning on the I'm going to turn that little number in the top left from 20 to 0 game, and everything else is been subsidiary to that. So he's got a chance. It's still going to require more things to happen for Steve. But
looks like Kitchen Finks is going to be the card here.
Yeah, certainly understandable why he would want to deploy Finks here. The issue with the Finks play is that he's likely to be facing a very similar situation next turn.
He went with Bloodbraid Elf.
Wow.
Good flip. The ooze definitely helps here.
Yeah, I mean, a very, very strong flip for Steve, and now Steve is just like, oh no, because he's going to have to use the Grim Lavamancer to exile his own 2 creatures this turn. So
it's interesting that he didn't do it in response.
Well, he can do it in response to the activation of the ooze, and the exiling cards with the Grim Lavamancer is part of the cost of the ability. So there's no way that Steve ends up missing the window.
Got it.
In fact, he may be trying to induce Nicolas to activating his Scavenging Ooze right now. So, Steve is still going to have the ability to get Nicolas down to 3 next turn, and could actually just draw a Lightning Bolt and kill him.
Is there an attack here? Doesn't look like there's an attack because of the potential shrinking of the Tarmogoyf. Though I might have liked to see an attack here to kind of... maybe not. Anyway, Steve does 2 damage, uses the 2 creatures so that the ooze doesn't actually gain any life. Wow, draws... this is going to be an exciting spin here. Lightning Bolt actually lethal.
Lightning Bolt lethal and Kolaghan's Command plus Grim Lavamancer means that most of Nicolas's deck would kill him with Dark Confidant. So pretty exciting spin. Steve has a shot.
Okay. Cascades into Liliana the Veil. Not one of those that actually provides an instant win.
Arguably one of the worst cards you could have cascaded into. I don't think he wants to even tick Liliana up because it just gives Nicolas food for his own Scavenging Ooze.
Have it down.
Again, just provides Nicolas food for his own Scavenging Ooze and allows him to remove his Dark Confidant from the battlefield. So that Liliana the Veil is borderline useless in this spot.
Okay. Now, really what Steve's hoping for, he's actually going to preemptively do 2 damage to Nicolas so that the flip itself will actually kill him immediately rather than...
This is it. I mean, this is the turn. If he hits a 3, Steve is on to the finals.
And here it is. 2! He gets a terminate. Is that... Oh. So where does that leave Nicolas here? He's at 1. He has to get rid of that Dark Confidant. I guess he could play Finks. But he also has to get rid of that Grim Lavamancer. So in some ways, he's priced into playing the Lily killing his own confidant and then terminating the Lavamancer is what I see. I don't know if you see something else. He obviously
it's going to leave him open. He's going to have to give Steve, I guess, one turn window of drawing both. Unfortunately, just another turn where, boy, would he love to have another mana in play. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that you could no, this still gives him the bolt as the draw, but he could terminate the Lavamancer, play Finks.
Yeah, it's just occurring to me that he probably has had some attacks with Dark Confidant that he's missed over the course of this game, where he could have a suicide attacked Dark Confidant and just offered it up to Steve if he wanted to eat it. Certainly this turn, he should be attacking with Dark Confidant.
Yep. No, that makes sense.
But yeah, I think he does need to remove both the Lavamancer and the Dark Confidant from the table this turn. So the other option would be to, play Finks and terminate the Grim Lavamancer, and then, be in the same situation where you're just trying to avoid hitting a 3. It's not that likely to hit a 3, right? He's got 2 remaining Bloodbraid Elves, 3 Lilianas, 2 Kolaghan's Command, and is that it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he could play Finks and terminate his own Dark Confidant, because, like, right now Steve has kind of run out of food.
Well, he's going to draw a card, and he has the ability to plus or minus Liliana, so he can find food if he needs it. He can also fire up Treetop Village and send it in there. Yeah. So I think that most of the ways I would start this turn involve attacking with Dark Confidant and seeing what happens.
Okay.
Especially since at some point Nicolas does need to get Steve dead, right? Even though he's so far ahead on resources. So that's one of those win-win attacks, right? You either get your own potentially devastating creature off the board, or you get in for 2 damage.
Yeah, I wonder if it's actually... It's probably correct to attack the Tarmogoyf as well, because he can actually terminate in combat.
Sure.
And get rid of that Lavamancer, putting a creature in the graveyard and making sure that either block with the Bloodbrave or the Ooze will result in one of those creatures dying.
Yep, great point. And that again threatens more damage, which increases his chance of being able to win next turn.
I guess he can. I'm just trying to think of another play. This seems pretty dangerous. He could technically terminate the Ooze and attack with everybody, and then play Finks.
Terminate the Ooze, attack with everyone. So threatening 10, 12, 14.
Yep. Or, I mean, maybe not at everyone. Maybe you can keep back one creature or something like that. But, like, essentially, well, he has to worry about the treetop on re-attack. But, like, it might actually just give him, like, a way of winning the turn after.
Right. He probably would be forced then to use his own Ooze on upkeep in response to the Dark Confidant trigger. But that definitely, a lot of different possible lines here. That's definitely another option.
Okay, so attacks with his Confidant. Steve not having any of that block-wise. He's now going to terminate something. Oh, he attacked Lily.
That's surprising.
Did not attack for damage. Okay, so he's terminating the Lavamancer. Step 1. Now going to play Liliana of the Veil.
No,
Finks. Okay.
Yeah, this is the riskier play, but the play that makes it more likely that he has a chance. Oh, he doesn't play land. He doesn't play a land. Interestingly, he's going to hold that land in his hand.
Why is he holding the land?
I do not know.
Okay, so now a 3 or a 4 will kill Nicolas.
Mm-hmm.
He still may need to kill his Confidant the turn after. But now Steve is likely to get probably 2 draws out of Bolt. Maybe not, actually, because he might gain some life from... Okay. Steve ticks up. Confident gets discarded, gets eaten by Steve's ooze. And because Nicolas is tapped out, he can't respond with his own. But no good attacks, so he's passing it. Okay, here we go. Okay, oh wow, he just avoided that 3, flipping through catacombs, but his draw step had Colgan's command.
Yeah. And he's very close to being able to kill Steve. Doesn't quite have enough. So he can Colgan's command Bloodbraid Elf and then use Liliana to finish Scavenging Ooze, and then he's threatening 3, 6, 9. Oh no, that is enough. Yeah, because the Scavenging Ooze will grow with the Tarmogoyf. So I'm sorry.
There's a treetop village, I think, that he can use to...
Yeah, and the Scavenging Ooze can also shrink Tarmogoyf. So he doesn't quite have 17, but so that's he can't do lethal, so let's see. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting decision here.
Yeah, so I mean, any turn that I'm trying to figure out whether Nicolas can get himself up to 5. I mean, technically he can actually Colgan's command his own Finks to go to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Should he want to do that, which means that no flip in his deck will actually kill him. So that's one thing to consider. He also could Colgan's command his own Dark Confidant. He also has the Scavenging Ooze, so it's possible that he might be able to play in such a way to actually get up to 5. Because 5 is the magical number for Nicolas, right?
Right. 5 is the magical number in terms of not dying to any card alone. Of course, Steve could still draw something like Colgan's Command or Lightning Bolt. The issue for Nicolas is that his creature interaction tools are Colgan's Command and Liliana. So if he used both of them on Steve, he could decimate his board, but he really feels like, I think, he wants to use them on himself in order to make sure that he just does not die next turn.
Okay, so Nicolas attacking again, possibly attacking Liliana this time. This is actually, the second one makes a little bit more sense than actually the first one, because this will cleanly kill Liliana. 17 and 15 is probably similar. Okay, so he does attack Liliana. Liliana goes to the graveyard. Now it's up to Nicolas to decide, does he want to go up to 5 life somehow? Does he want to try and clear the board?
Wow.
Okay, he decides to play a tapped land. Now,
so this is the Black Cleave Cliffs we were surprised he didn't play last turn. He values playing it this turn over an untapped land to be able to deploy both Liliana and Colgan's Command.
Okay, passes the turn to Steve. Steve draws a Raging Ravine. Not particularly useful, but it's possible that we're going to see a discard and do 2 damage to my own Finks play here to remove the out. No, he actually just kills his own Confidant, which is effectively the same thing, except it allows a Lightning Bolt to actually, I guess, like Lightning Bolt the turn after to still hurt him, but he does have an ooze.
Right, and killing his own Finks actually wouldn't work because Steve could use Scavenging Ooze with the Finks trigger on the stack to exile the Finks, so there's no way to actually gain the life there.
Oh yeah, that's true. My bad there.
So yeah, the only surprising thing, I guess, is that he wouldn't have chosen to want to have a Liliana minus targeting Steve. But Nicolas still in a good spot, but still a precarious spot, just being at 3 life.
Okay. Inquisition, dead draw by Nicolas here. No cards in Steve's hand right now. Now I think it's going to be, let's see, Liliana probably coming down and minusing.
possibly plussing. So Liliana could plus here and discard Dark Confidant, and Nicolas would be able to have another 3 green mana, so he could win the quote-unquote scavenging ooze fight over who gets to exile Nicolas's own Dark Confidant, which would get Nicolas out of that lightning bolt range. And we've noted a couple times that Nicolas has been very careful about his life total, so potentially turning off Nicolas's ability or Steve's ability to top deck lightning bolt and kill him is something he might be considering.
Okay. Looks like he's tapping mana for Liliana. He's forcing a sacrifice.
Okay, so same concept here. That Liliana forcing a sacrifice. Scavenging Ooze is going to be able. Nicolas's Scavenging Ooze is going to win the life gain battle over Steve's.
Though Steve actually realizes that, actually activates his treetop. So it's a land in the graveyard and not a creature. And so now Lightning Bolt is alive. Yeah, live top deck here.
Great play, Steve Rubin. And maybe Nicolas will ruin going down instead of up there with the Liliana if Steve's able to draw a bolt. Wow.
Okay, Finks goes to attack. This is a... Oh, no. Would have been a fine attack because I think if the ooze runs into it, but obviously he realizes now, as I did, that the ooze actually negates the Finks.
Yeah, but Nicolas again would be happy with any creature going to the graveyard this turn. You would think. Wow, and so now he's also going to expose himself to Kolaghan's command with this fetch land. So that's interesting. Is he going to Inquisition himself? What's going on? Okay, Hazaret. All right, so now a lot of outs for Steve.
Another ooze by Steve, so not really what he wants because that ooze can't really grow at all because there's no food in the graveyard.
No, but he's not likely to die again, so he's probably going to have another draw step at the full range of burn spells next turn. And Nicolas is going to want to consider, again, things like maybe Inquisitioning himself or ticking Liliana up to kill his own Dark Confidant in order to just gain a life or two to get out of range of Steve's top deck burn spells.
Okay. I think Steve's trying to figure out whether playing an ooze helps or hurts him here. It's possible that maybe... No, I'm trying to think of a reason why you wouldn't keep it in your hand. Can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Well, the only reason would be that he just really wants to keep as much green mana untapped to try to win Scavenging Ooze fights over potential creatures that go to the graveyard. It seems like that's going to be really difficult for him to do on Nicolas's turn anyway, but maybe he's thinking, okay, Nicolas's way to put creatures in the graveyard involves tapping some of those lands to activate Hazaret the Fervent or potentially casting a removal spell that he draws, and so maybe I'll have enough green mana to fight through it. I think on balance, I like the decision to play the ooze here.
Yeah, also because the Liliana could tick up, which means there is a creature in the graveyard too, so it may be that he has to just get it out there. Okay, Tamargov's drawn by Nicolas. This draw doesn't really change too much. I mean, it's a reasonably sized threat.
Yeah, and it is possible if he wanted to go up to 4 life, he could do it this turn by casting Inquisition of Kozilek, targeting himself and ticking Liliana the Veil up. He could discard both the creatures in his hand, and he'd be able to exile both of them with his own Scavenging Ooze, getting to 4 obviously being a crucial number against the deck with Lightning Bolt. Nicolas instead trying to continue to go wider in order to hopefully eventually set up some kind of an attack.
Okay. Ticks up with Liliana, goes to 2 loyalty. Let's see if he makes any attacks. Any good attacks here, Paul?
Yeah, I'm certainly going to be attacking with Kitchen Finks. Again, the fact that one or either player could exile it with the trigger on the stack is something that's to me, the ability to gain a life here is far more valuable. So I'm certainly going to attack with Kitchen Finks. I wouldn't mind even a larger attack here. Throwing in, for example, a couple Bloodbraid Elves and a Tarmogoyf. I think that he's okay if creatures trade off in combat. He really just wants to start getting some damage in and potentially gaining some life with his own Scavenging Ooze while he has green mana advantage.
Okay, so it looks like all the 3/2s and the Tarmogoyf coming in, and Hazoret finally had enough of sitting back here.
Wow. 9, 12, 15. Okay. This is a riskier attack. When you send the Hazoret in, okay. The Hazoret's the easiest creature for Steve to block because he can just he's happy to not kill any of Nicolas's creatures. He wants to put Ooze in front of Hazoret. The other creatures are all more difficult since they represent an opportunity for Nicolas to gain life. So I think I like this attack of 4 creatures stronger than throwing Hazoret in there as well. Especially since if you attack with the Hazoret, you're facing 3 potential counterattackers from Steve, and now any removal spell is going to represent a lethal attack for Steve. So I think Nicolas, we mentioned before, he's really more comfortable playing limited. He qualified for this tournament playing one of the Mox Opens. He's not someone who has thousands of matches of reps in with the Jund archetype. So
okay, go on.
He's wanting to just be very careful in this situation. Right, we see Steve immediately go to block the Hazoret with Scavenging Ooze. That's the happiest block he's ever made.
So, Steve goes to 9, taking the damage because he does not want to put creatures into the graveyard. And he draws Bloodbraid Elf for another spin to get what is likely either a Bolt or a Kolgan's Command to win.
And removal spell is actually pretty good here too, right? Since he'll be representing, I guess it's good, but not lethal.
Yeah, because there is a Raging Ravine that he can. Liliana Vale has not been a great flip for Bloodbraid Elf, really. Every time it's happened, it's been a little bit not, it hasn't been the best flip here. Doesn't want to use it because it will fill the graveyard.
Yeah, I think that might have been we've called a few false finishes in this one already, but I think that might be the last straw for Steve. I don't know how he can survive another attack because Nicolas can activate Hazoret on end step, activate Hazoret on his turn. That puts Steve down to 5, and I can't see how he can not take 5 damage from the creatures.
Okay. So Nicolas agrees with you. He also can go on.
Steve needs Nicolas to make a mistake. So I think Steve needs to do something like minus Liliana and hope that Nicolas sacrifices one of his untapped creatures, plus Liliana, and hope that Nicolas forgets to Hazoret. He can't Hazoret in response, right? He's dead to the... Oh, so, okay, actually, I take it back. If he pluses Liliana here, Nicolas needs to leave his mana open to block with Raging Ravines. So he'll only be able to activate Hazoret once, putting him down to 7. Steve may be able to put together a block where he only takes... No. Wishful thinking here.
Yeah, I don't think so. He actually can also gain 1 by if... Well, no.
No. The walls have closed in. We've gotten a few steps down every yellow brick road and then been swept by a gigantic rainstorm. So it just seems like that Bloodbraid Elf needed to hit a stronger cascade for Steve. So he actually he's hoping that he activates Hazoret in response.
Okay. Nicolas can actually gain 1 life here by actually eating up that Dark Confidant, because Steve only has 1 green available. Turning off the potential out if it gets back to his turn of Colgan's command, actually, but I think he's going to have to block so much here, so there's definitely going to be creatures in the graveyard. Yep, I believe this is the end for Steve for this game.
What an interesting and long game in which both players had many different decision points, and Steve had much more of a chance to win that we initially gave him when he fell very far behind, correctly identifying that he needed to go on the kind of cheese you out direct damage plan. He just couldn't find the key lightning bolt or call against command to deal his last points of damage. So well played by Steve, but we're headed to a game 3.
I kind of hope that at the end of this game, Steve draws a couple cards off the top of his deck, just so
have to. Yeah.
Okay, I believe this is going to be an alpha strike, because doing the math of the situation, it's fairly academic. Drawing some cards. Oh, yep, he did. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Oh, he's still going. Like the lightning bolt was 6 cards down. Steve, a man after my own heart. Playing Moto, you have to. There are things that you do while playing Moto that really identify you as a kindred spirit. Drawing cards after the end of the game is definitely one of them.
I consider it not a real day of playing Magic Online if I haven't clicked through my entire turn at least once. So Steve goes back to the 4th Dark Confidant for game 3.
Makes sense on the play. Wants to actually have, see if he can get an unanswered Dark Confidant, hoping for the, discard into Dark Confidant play. He decides to keep the 3 Thoughtseizes and the 1 Inquisition. Just being, especially with that Hazoret and Bloodbraids, I think the stock on Thoughtseize over Inquisition is much higher in this matchup.
Yeah, I agree with you there completely. The question is really, again, more about those fulminators. Neither player has even touched them, so I'm going to assume that my knowledge of the Jund Mirror is behind on whether that's a playable card.
Okay. We're going to go to game 3, match 2. Steve Rubin up 1 match. He's playing for his position in the top 2. Nicolas playing to stay in this match. So Dark Confidant, Lightning Bolt, Thoughtseize, Colgan's Man 3 land for Nicolas, Tarmogoyf, Scavenging Ooze for land for Steve. Looks like I'd rather be on Nicolas' side again here.
Yeah, Nicolas has a perfect hand. He's got all the lands that he needs. He's got multiple discard spells with a Dark Confidant. Steve's hand is, basically at the bottom of the range of hands you could never consider mulliganing. He's got plenty of lands. He's got good threats, but he's lacking any interaction whatsoever. So, Steve is going to want to find a removal spell for the Dark Confidant that Nicolas ends up playing.
Steve drawing a Bloodbraid, so that actually has helped a lot.
Yeah, Bloodbraid is huge. It's looking, unless Steve top decks, like Nicolas is going to get at least 1 trigger from Dark Confidant, but then, between a couple of draw steps, Bloodbraid, Elf Cascade, he may be able to deal with it pretty quickly afterwards.
Okay, another Inquisition drawn by Nicolas. He may choose to just go for the tearing your hand apart strategy first. Yeah, or maybe. Yeah, go on.
I don't like that approach at all. There would be some merit to casting one of these discard spells here if you had another form of black mana in your hand, so that next turn, you could play a black, untap black, Thoughtseize your opponent, and play Dark Confidant. But lacking, that additional black mana, he's just foregoing a Dark Confidant trigger this way, and basically going to allow Steve just a lot of turns to be able to find the answer to Dark Confidant before Nicolas can get it online. So Nicolas has given Steve a huge window, I think, in this game.
Yeah, and he's going to probably play the Thoughtseize because he saw one Bloodbraid Elf, but actually he's going to be surprised by the fact that Steve's drawn a second one, which actually will allow him to at least get one of the card advantage machines out there.
Right. And here we have the rarest of Jund mirrors, in which one player had no removal spells or interaction at all, and the other player had discard spells and Dark Confidant, and Dark Confidant has not triggered yet in the game. So I think that Nicolas has to be very happy about that. Wow.
Liliana Vel, a very good flip here. He's going to lose his Raging Ravine, but Nicolas's hand is stacked.
Yeah, I mean, this is an amazing time to have Liliana of the Veil. So it's a situation where you can tick it up pretty happily. You know your opponent probably has really, really strong cards in their hand, and you're just thrilled with that cascade off Bloodbraid Elf.
It seems that I wonder if he's considering. Probably going to keep the Confidant and the Command. The Bolt is, while it deals with the Bloodbraid, seems like the least powerful right now.
There's some merit to discarding Dark Confidant, bolting Liliana, and then untapping and using Kolaghan's Command to finish off Liliana and return your Dark Confidant. You know your opponent's going to be on no resources, so that's a potential option as well. Sure. If you discard the Bolt, like, you can't really cast the Dark Confidant, and you have no creatures in your graveyard to return with your Kolaghan's Command. So I actually do think I like discarding Dark Confidant here.
Okay, so let's see if he follows up with your line, Paul. Oh, it looks like he's considering discarding the Kolaghan's Command here. Yep, in fact, that's what he does. Now, see if Nicolas decides to clear out the Bloodbraid while before it does any damage, or is he going to save that Bolt perhaps to go to Liliana a bit later, or maybe even for that Raging Ravine?
It seems to me like he's done this play intending to Lightning Bolt Liliana of the Veil and putatively guaranteeing himself a Dark Confidant trigger in the following turn. So it seems like, again, it seems to me as if he's switched directions in terms of how much he values getting those Dark Confidant triggers. Now it seems like he may be second guessing himself. Okay, yeah, he's going to do that.
Yep. Tarmogoyf.
Bad draw for Nicolas there, yeah. Nicolas really wanted to draw either a land or a Lightning Bolt or something of that nature. This Tarmogoyf is just going to get eaten by Liliana.
Yep, that Inquisition's not going to be useful because Steve's going to want to pick up that Liliana regardless, so he's going to get that Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, but Nicolas is not out of it yet. The Dark Confidant we talked about earlier, if it can find him a removal spell for this Bloodbraid Elf, it can then attack the Liliana of the Veil, and Nicolas is back ahead. So he really wants to see a removal spell in his top two cards.
Okay. Steve going to protect his Liliana by not attacking with his Bloodbraid Elf. One land here and another Confidant. So actually kind of gets a rebuy here because it's not going to be possible. Like, even if Steve cashes his Liliana, there's still going to be one more Dark Confidant in play here.
Yep, not bad at all. And now the onus is on Steve. Steve is the one who really wants to draw a removal spell.
Okay. Verdant Catacombs, the draw by Steve Rubin, not particularly useful, though it does actually allow him to attack with his Raging Ravine, so that's not nothing.
Wouldn't shock me to see him fire up the Ravine and the Bloodbraid Elf and attack with both creatures here. Threatening 7 to put Nicolas down to 9. Okay.
So he actually activates Lily, gets rid of one of the Confidants, and it's decided to go into attack mode here, attacking with both the Bloodbraid. And now, this is 7 damage, brings him to 9. Now the Confidant trigger is now, likely to be a little bit of a liability. Actually, also drawing a Hazoret, which, while going to be active, I mean, Nicolas is at 5.
Yeah, so a lot of things just happened right there. So Hazoret the Fervent, a really, really strong blocker, but Nicolas under gigantic life total pressure again there. I was a little surprised to see Steve activated Liliana before attacking with his 2 creatures. I would have liked to have seen him see how Nicolas was going to block, since there's no way he would have just double blocked Rubin with 2 Dark Confidants. But nevertheless, Liliana here, nice draw for Steve. He has 2 good options with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, you think he keeps the Dark Confidant in play, right?
I don't think so, actually. I think that he's actually ahead on board, so it wouldn't shock me to see him tick it up on the Dark Confidant, because Nicolas... Okay. Surprising.
I think he might go for the Bloodbraid here.
Interesting.
Because if he kills Dark Confidant, Hazoret can attack that... Oh, no, he's gone for the Tarmogoyf here, which is a 5/6, which can actually block Hazoret cleanly. Okay, we're in a familiar position of Nicolas almost dying to his Dark Confidence here. And in this case, it doesn't have a clean answer to actually remove it.
Yeah, I was surprised when Steve made that play. I hadn't counted how big Tarmogoyf would be, but it makes a ton of sense now. Tarmogoyf being a 5/6, being able to stare back at Hazoret, Steve is in much better position to turtle up and try to ride his opponent's Dark Confidant to victory than I had anticipated. So nice play by Steve there, recognizing that Tarmogoyf would be a good answer to Hazoret. Wow, looks like Nicolas is manning up here. 3 life, and he's looking to put another Dark Confidant onto the battlefield. I love it.
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, it's I
love it. This is pure magic.
Okay, so he's decided to play 2 creatures, Tarmogoyf and Dark Confidant. No fear, well, maybe a little fear. I can't really see Nicolas right now. He looks pretty calm and collected in his picture there. Okay, so drawing the Fatal Push. Does this create a situation where... No, I was thinking it might change something, but I don't.
No, it's a great card for Steve to have in his hand. And it's a good card for him to have, especially given that Nicolas doesn't know about it. So
okay, let's see if he survives this turn here. Seems treetop, misses 1. Lily out of the Veil. Unfortunately, the greatness did not come, or it came at the high cost of a semi-final at the Magic Online Championship. So Steve Rubin going to the finals. He won.